everyone, and welcome to the sequel season of Jim Man at the Movies, the show where the two of us sit and give our opinions on movies we've seen. I'm Jimmy Price.
And I'm Matthew Oswald. And today we will be introducing a new segment that's going to be replacing the older segment from Season 1 called Chair of the Week. So, Jimmy, do you mind explaining to us what this new segment is going to be like?
Sure. This new segment will be entitled Fresh or Rotten, and unlike the previous segment called Chair of the Week, this is going to be a little bit different, and we'll be using the website Rotten Tomatoes and their handy little tool called the Tomato Meter, which ranks films on a percentage of 100 to 0%. Then we'll be taking films that have not been placed on the Tomato Meter or have not been released into theaters yet, and simply be giving our own percentage on what we might think or what we might saw or you know what.
Alright, so the film we'll be judging today is called It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, starring Tom Hanks, who's playing Fred Rogers, aka Mr. Rogers. So the premise of this movie is basically Mr. Rogers' personal life, aside from the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So, Jimmy, what do you think this movie's going to get on Rotten Tomatoes?
Well, I remember the show fondly because I grew up with it in my childhood, and I was kind of very interested to see how they would approach how Mr. Rogers is like on screen, how they would depict this guy's life beyond the camera. And if they are going to blow up certain things, like I know they would because this is based on a true story movie, then I'm kind of very excited to see how this will go. Sure, there might be some screw-ups here and there, but what movie doesn't have its screw-ups? So I'll give it a 92%.
Now, I give this film like a 93%, which is 1% higher than you do, and I think the reason being for that is because when I was watching the trailer, it was like very heartwarming and touching, which is something that I really think is like something that could show that, hey, this could be a good movie. And also, it's Tom Hanks, so you can't ever go wrong with Tom Hanks. I think he'd do a great job as Mr. Rogers in this movie.
That's right. So today we'll be reviewing Avengers Endgame, which released on April 26, 2019, and it overthrowed some of James Cameron's most popular films, including Titanic and Avatar.
Alright, with a budget of $356 million, this film made over $858 million domestic-wise, with over $2 billion worldwide, which is very, very difficult for a film to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. That is a lot of money for a film to make, especially one that's 3 hours, no less. Now, I'm not going to go in too deep on what I think about this movie, because as we go along, we'll just say our thoughts and whatnot. But the brief description of what I think is the story is actually kind of good, and the characters are really compelling, despite them being superpowered individuals.
Right. I think that this film is actually one of the best superhero movies that I've ever seen, which is like very hard to top because I think that this movie is actually one of the best endings to like a whole saga, even though it's not the end of the MCU. I think they did a really good job with this movie on ending the saga.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. This saga that they built up for 21, 22 movies or so, they actually done a real good job with this, and I'm kind of excited to see how Marvel will go, how they will go beyond past this point, how they will improve, and with the way they're going so far, it looks like they're heading to a pretty good future.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, with the ending with Endgame, it was also very touching, which is like, we can talk about the ending later, but again, this is really one of the, I was so satisfied with this film in the theater when I was watching it. Like, I was just blown away after walking out of the theater. It was that good.
All right, so with that out of the way, let's move on to story.
Spoiler for those of you who haven't seen it, of course.
Now, it's going to be kind of hard to explain the whole summary of a movie that's basically 3 hours long. So the gist of it is that it's Back to the Future meets superpowered individuals. That's the shortened version of it.
All right. And with the story, I really liked how they did it with the time traveling thing. And the reason I really liked that was because you can actually like have some throwbacks to like some of the old Avengers films, like the first one and also one of the Thor movies. I don't remember which one it was, but I thought that was a really nice touch. And plus, you could have like some feel of nostalgia to it, which I really like.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. There were a lot of moments of nostalgia going back to all those films, like the first Avengers, and when you were thinking about what kind of Thor movie you were talking about, it was The Dark World, where they had Thor's mom back and whatnot. And it's actually a pretty well done story. The dialogue actually feels like dialogue and not just a robot saying what we humans think we say. And it's actually kind of interesting how much dialogue and how much they packed into a 3-hour movie. It's kind of astonishing to me, really.
Yeah, and I think that, and I have to say that the final battle in this movie is actually one of the best final battle scenes that I have ever seen in a superhero movie. Not any movie really of all time, but in any superhero movie, because we finally get to see all the characters, which we can talk about later. We finally see all of them come together against Thanos, which is something that we've all been dying to see for 11 years now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. There were a lot of heavy hitters and a lot of big players in that battle. But overall, the story is actually pretty well done, well thought out, and it's actually one of the best things about the movie. Well, aside from the other things about the movie, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
All right, so let us move on to the characters now.
Now, when talking about the characters, since there are a lot of them in a 3-hour movie, we're only going to go pick out a couple characters or so, or whatever we feel like. But these characters, in my opinion, like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man, and so forth, they're actually pretty good characters. They're actually pretty relatable, even though they have superpowers. And it's pretty interesting to see how Marvel builds up these characters very, very good.
Yeah, now, I think that with how the characters were in this movie, it felt like it was realistic for them to feel on how they were feeling after the events of Infinity War. And also, Iron Man and Captain America, both seeing them together again after 3 years, that was also like building some damage back up that they had in Civil War, which I thought was also very well done. And also, with Iron Man's sacrifice at the end, it was actually one of the best superhero sacrifices that I have ever seen.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to top all that, but with this movie, it actually feels like these characters are pretty relatable, even though they have superpowers, even though they go through all this stuff that we don't typically go through nowadays. But now looking back at this, the characters do impact a lot to this community. It actually feels like the comic book characters are coming to life and playing out events that we might not be able to get to play out.
Yeah, and I think that by now, this movie, since there's been like so many other movies about each individual characters, not
Except
all
for
of them,
Black Widow.
Yeah, not all of them, but they all felt like they were well developed because they had their own solo movies. Because, well, not because now since they're all in this one movie, since there's so many of them, it works because they all had their own time to develop instead of just introducing a lot of new characters and jamming it into one movie.
Yeah, that's definitely true there. So let's see if the story and characters need to be fixed in any way, shape, or form. So this is what we'll do before we actually get into the grand finale, which is the star rating system. But we have to discuss if the characters and story need to be fixed at all.
All right, now, I don't think the story or characters, they need to be fixed in any way. I don't think so. And also, talking about the characters and how they don't need to be fixed, I enjoyed Spider-Man's fight scenes in this movie, which, just me personally, I'm also happy that Spider-Man was with the Avengers with the final battle scene. But aside from all that, I don't think the story is fine just the way it is, and also the characters are fine just the way they are. So that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I don't think the story or the characters in that matter need to be fixed in any way, because the movie's story is actually pretty well done, well thought out, and it actually feels like a comic book coming to life. The characters, even though they have superpowers, are pretty relatable, even though they don't have certain struggles they have to go through, like, and all that. But it's pretty nice to see how Marvel has come in the, I don't know how many years they've been making movies. It's actually pretty astonishing how far they come.
Oh yeah, they've definitely became like, they've gotten a lot further than they did with the first Iron Man movie, which is like 11 years, which is pretty well done. So, and like I said, I think that this is one of the best super movies I've ever seen. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It's definitely one of the best I've ever seen, and it'll probably continue to get better the more times I see it.
Oh yeah, me too. I think I'm looking forward to the future movies. All right, so now let's move on to the star rating system.
So if you've been with us for the past season, you probably know how this is going to go down. We take a look at the film and we base it on a percentage of 0 to 5 stars. So yeah, let's get started.
All right, now I give this film a perfect 5 out of 5 stars. The reason being is because I was just blown away by my experience watching this movie in the theater. Like, I was immediately just glued into the screen right at the beginning, and it was like near impossible for someone to distract me and get me out of the movie. And like I said, this is actually one of the best superhero movies that I've ever seen. I don't think I can say that enough, but that's the reason why I give this film 5 out of 5 stars, because it's what it needs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. This film definitely needs a 5 out of 5, and for a multitude of reasons. The story is pretty well done, pretty well thought out, and like I said before, it's like a comic book coming to life. The characters like Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, and so forth, they're actually pretty relatable characters with semi-relatable problems, even though they're superpowered beings dealing with a big bad monster of the week kind of deal. But overall, this is one of the most interesting Marvel films I've ever seen, and if they continue down this path with big and bigger movies with bigger baddies, they might have a shot of being one of the best companies I've ever seen in a while. So I'll give it a 5 out of 5 stars.
All right, and also congrats for being the highest grossing film of all time. So now we give this film a very special award called the At the Movies Recommended Film to See Award, which means that if it's a movie that he and I both give out of 5 stars, that's what we will give it. So, congratulations, Avengers Endgame. You just won the At the Movies Recommended Film to See Award.
So what did you think of Avengers Endgame? Did you like it or did you not like it? What else do you want to cover next on the show? Leave your comment down below or follow us on our social medias.
Y'all can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube. Where can they find you, Jimmy?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So tune in next week as we take a look at Detective Pikachu next screening here at the movies.